Two things. One is, and I guess we're talking about right and the wrong. I can't, and when I come into this position, as with many issues, there were some leadership missteps, some things that I would have done differently if I were a council member. No slight to anyone, I'm just speaking about things I would have done differently. So to right this issue, there needs to be, in my opinion, some financial repair and retribution for those who have been impacted. This is a serious issue, okay? And the impacts of it are long-term and already there. So we definitely, need to have that conversation and be serious about where that comes from and how we're distributing those funds. But that's top priority to me in terms of how we write this. And then second, just requiring, I've been in some meetings where federal government representatives speaking to the impacted communities about this project and what the next steps forward are. As a council person, I need to be on top of that, meaning stressing accountability on them, making that a top council issue for me, making sure my community is involved, not only involved, but seeing the fruits of what they say they're going to do. So I think there's accountability there, and I think there's financial element as well, making sure folks are made whole for what they've experienced.
Got it. Byron, how about you?
You know, it's ironic. You start from the beginning. You remember when Herndon Home was torn down and half of it was not built back because they found lead then. Now it's a Georgia World Congress Center parking lot. You go back to parking lot C, which is on Northside Drive, where Georgia Power was there. And it was a part of the Warm Springs contributory that actually led water throughout the entire community on the west side. And then you have to be honest as elected officials and watch out, because everything government says is not good for you. So the only way you remediate lead out of soil is to tear down. So we have to be sure as leaders, when you tear down and remove, that you're gonna rebuild and replace all of the residents that we're moving out. So we have to have strong leadership to understand things that people are presenting. Oh, we're gonna clean up the lead in the neighborhood. We knew it was there. We've been knowing it was there. So why now, and not get into a conspiracy, but why now is it important? Because you need the west side, but that's another story. Why is it now important that you want to come in and clean up? So strong leadership, strong advocacy, and to understand that this is not a City of Atlanta issue. This is a national issue in which we will need national and state money to do the cleanup that is needed to be done in our communities.
So, I mean, Erika presented that we need to actually do financial repair. Like, we need to have reparations for this. This is, let's put dollars back into the hands of family for the damage that was done. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, before we can do that, we must make sure that the families return. Because right now, there's a mass exodus out of the neighborhood because we cannot afford to live there. If we do the remediation on the soil, we must make sure those families return.
And so how would you do that? How would you ensure that families can return?
Well, as we talk about receiving the money or creating these plans for remediation, we put that in the plan. If we move this person out of this property, we're bringing this person back. Unfortunately, our neighborhoods is about 70–80% rental. So we have to keep that in mind as well, to understand people living in property don't necessarily own the property. That's why it's important for, I think someone else said it, all of the vacant land at the City of Atlanta, Beltline, Atlanta Public Schools, Atlanta University Center, Atlanta Housing, all of the vacant land that we own, we began to build on if we get serious about this conversation of affordable housing.
So this is one of the districts where, you know, trust has been eroded year after year. We always use District 3 to make promises. The marketing of Atlanta is often built off of the history of District 3. And then it is the people in District 3 who suffer the consequences of that. So there's good reason why people decide not to participate in the process, which we see play out when it comes to voter numbers. We see it play out when it comes to engagement numbers, because folks are tired. They can't keep going to meeting after meeting to be studied, and then nothing actually happens. So how will you rebuild trust between people and their local government inside of District 3, a place where folks have just had broken and eroded trust for so long?
Okay, I can take that first. That's one of the issues I'm running on, is improving community engagement. When I look at my race and getting into this runoff, I'm not in a political circle or certain political backings. And I made it to this runoff because I took the time, and we talked about me having a small daughter. I took the time. I want to do this so much and improve our engagement in our community. I knocked on thousands of doors myself. Okay, that's the only, you have to meet the people where they are. So having these one-on-one conversations, of course I have a canvas team too, right? Because I want to spread my message, but I'm out there doing the work myself to meet people, show them what I'm about. Again, I didn't come into this with any, political backing, right? But I managed to do this because I'm having these conversations with people about what the future looks like and how I want them to be a part of the future. I consider this the people's seat. That's what we're going to restore that as. But you can't, unless you're meeting the people where they are and having these conversations, we're not going to get anywhere. So that's a top priority to me. Is something I've been campaigning on it, and I've shown, that I'm very serious about it through what I'm doing right now in my campaign.
We talked about apathy is very high across the city, but definitely in District 3. We have been historically the lowest turnout district in every election. Once we get through talking to people, knocking on doors, asking for your vote, you must have the ability to go and fight for them as well. Because once you get through with those conversations, our friends and neighbors are going back to living, just taking care of their family. So being who you are to the electorate that you promised to be there for them. But more importantly, we need small successes. We need to be able to say, we're going to do this on Tuesday, and then get it done on Tuesday, period. Then you begin to get people involved and begin to trust the system as well, because all of the letdowns that my friends and neighbors have had over the decades needs to stop. I am the person to get that done.
Last question for y'all. Byron, you've run before. You vacated a seat on the school board to run for council. Are you going to run for council and then run for something else? Is that something that we should be afraid of, that we're going to have representation? Same thing happened to the previous representative. Representative was elected, ended up running for mayor. District 3 is in need of some consistent leadership. Do you have a commitment to stay in this seat as long as they'll keep you? Or do you have aspirations to move to something else if it were to come up?
District 3 is my home, literally, and in the future. Born and raised there, and have always wanted to continue to move to that next level, to get to city council, to begin to deliver some of the things that have been trained to do by the district. I actually left the school system because, unfortunately, the city council member at that time passed. So it's one of those extraordinary situations that we come about in which we really have to look at our life and the things that we have to do. While I was on the school board, we've been able to lay the foundation for some of the great things that the Washington cluster and Douglas cluster is doing now. I came on board as a board member. Was at a 51% graduation rate. While now we're at an 83% graduation rate. We was able, with a lot of my friends, to actually create the first equity policy for Atlanta Public Schools. So I looked at the time of my tenure in Atlanta Public Schools, and I weighed that, because not only was I leaving a seat, I was leaving the people that was dependent on me to fight. A lot of them, my friends and neighbors. A lot of them, one of them was my son that's in Atlanta Public Schools now. So it was always circumstances. But to get back to your question, I plan to be on Atlanta City Council and to stay there and fight for my friends and neighbors, because we in District 3 has a long way to go, and I plan to quarterback that effort all the way to our proverbial Super Bowl.
Erika, you've talked about having an entrepreneurial spirit. This is also, you've been fighting for this community for a long time as well. What is your, what differentiates you from Byron that people should look at? We know he's run for office before, he's held office before, but is that the spirit we need right now? Is that, or do we need something different? And why you?
We do need something different. We need a fresh perspective that can go in and be independent, because and when you are independent, you're able to advocate for the people better, right? So if you look at your choices here, I am the independent choice who is able to advocate for the people properly. So I think that is
When you say independent choice, what do you mean by that?
I'm not sure. I'm happy to answer that. But I'm not in any I'm not backed by any establishments or groups. I am a citizen who wants to see this community do better. We have leadership who continues to run over and over and often doesn't have anything to show for their leadership, the title that they held. I'm concerned about that. I'm sick of it. Voters are sick of it. We need fresh perspective, people who are gonna come in there and do the work. I'm not doing it for power or clout or to keep running from position to position. And I will get in there and fight for families just like anyone else who's doing that. But again, fresh perspective is needed here. Folks are tired of the same old. We're tired of people in these positions talking about what they've done, and we don't see it. So that's it.
Are you able to specifically speak to kind of what institutional backing or what you're specifically talking about with Byron, so that we as voters can understand that, and Byron can either confirm or deny whether that's the case?
Well, I don't want to make this a back and forth messy forum, but anyone who knows Mr. Amos, you know his background and affiliations, so I'll just leave it at that.
I don't. That's why I wanted to understand. I genuinely want to make sure, because if there's something that we need, that's suspect and weird, that we need to be thinking about, that wouldn't be the first time that happens on city council. But that's a bold thing to say, so just want to make sure
so a great first step is to look at financial disclosures and who is backing candidates. So I just recommend that we start there. Now, I don't have Mr. Amos's financial disclosure here up and with me, but that is always a great step. When you receive political mail, text messages, etc., I recommend too that you look at where that came from. You're able to see that on a mailer, or if someone's sending you text messages sometimes. So I think that those are appropriate places to look.
Got it. Byron, do you have any response to that? Just kind of who's financially backing you right now? Where's the majority of your money coming from? Can you just speak specifically to that?
Yeah.
Thank
you for answering the question, because you realize you didn't get an answer. Those are elevator speeches and pitch marks that you hear to try to confuse the public. Over my 20 plus years of services, of course, I have developed friendships with developers, as she wants to say, special interest groups, in which are PTAs, mother groups, and everyone else. So I have been able to enjoy my friends and neighbors and colleagues that I have built relationships over my years of service. And I guess that's what she's talking about. But our campaign disclosures is public knowledge.
Who are some of your top contributors in your camp? Like because she may not have the disclosure, but you certainly know who gives you money. So when it comes at the top of your disclosures, who's up there? Who is it that? You
want names or you want business?
Yeah, I mean, I want to know who's giving you the cash flow that is apparently up for, controversy or debate. I would love to know.
A lot of my friends and neighbors and individual companies have done so. There are some, because you have a limit that people can contribute. So some of the people have reached those limits. Some have contracts with the city of Atlanta. Some do not. Some have contracts with the school board. Some do not. So I don't want to give anyone personal name, because I will tell you, you can go, it's public knowledge. But those are the same people that have contributed to all campaigns, that have contributed to, I think, some of her campaigns as well in 2019. So to sit here and try to use that as something that is negative, it really says you do not have the connections, you do not have the ability, you do not have the experience to move us forward in this city. And that's what it says.
So I want to be fair to what she actually said. What she actually said was that there are folks who spend money on your campaign that would imply that they have special interest or influence on your decision making, and that people may have controversy with, given District 3's history with developers, history with these types of organizations. But I don't want to speak for you, Erika. I want to make sure you have a chance to respond to that. Is that specifically what you believe is of concern? Because we're going to have to differentiate between the candidates, right? And where people get their money and who's pulling the strings matters. So I do want to understand what you are specifically saying, because I think there is a little bit of murkiness in there, but I don't think she didn't answer the question. I do think you said it's within financial disclosures.
I very much did answer the question, yes, and I stand by that. I did not say it was a negative thing. That is up to you as the that is up to you as the voters and the public to decide what you think is negative or positive here. But I care very much about civic engagement and making sure that we vote with the facts. So I didn't say anything was positive or negative. I just point out that I think it's important that we look at who is backing certain candidates financially and whether that impacts your independence. Independence is a very important issue when we're talking elected officials. So that's
And you
simply
believe
what
you
I
have
said.
independence because you don't have donors who are...
It's not just about donors, but yeah, absolutely. I don't owe anyone, and I'm not saying that Mr. Amos is before I get jumped on here, but I don't, speaking about myself, I don't have any, I'm coming into this office able to effectively represent the people because I don't owe anything to any particular groups.
Gotcha. Last piece of this, Byron, is if you do have contributors that would expect something, how would you create that differentiation between someone who may have a contract with the airport and is like, come on, Byron, like, come on, you know, like we could do this. This is just take care of me. You throw me a bone, it'll be all good. That's not uncommon. It's not unusual. That has happened. How can we know that that won't happen with you if you do have donors of all sorts?
Well, let me say this. I say to my contributors the same thing that I say to my residents, is that the only thing a contribution gets you is a listening ear and someone to be there when you need someone to voice an opinion to. And that's the same thing I offer to my opponents, but to my constituents. But let me do something that she can't do. Check my record. I have voted against people that have contributed to my campaigns throughout my elected career. So you can actually pull the record from my voting from Atlanta Public Schools compared to those that have donated against me, and you can actually check the record. It's all public, so that's why I stand on.
Okay. All right, can you all give it up for our District 3 candidates? Thank you, thank you.